Hello and welcome back to the channel. I always talk about employment, job, life, and culture of Germany on my channel, but today's topic is a little different. Today I want to discuss about self-employment or entrepreneurship. I strongly believe that most of you watching this video had thought about entrepreneurship at some point in life, even me too, actually. So some of you might have tried and failed due to certain reasons. If you're one of them, or if you're just curious to know the process of being an entrepreneur or freelancer, then this video is for you. Obviously, I am not expert to talk on this topic, and hence I invited one of the experienced and well-known person in the startup industry, Mr. Lasse, who is a CEO of organization called Viper. Lasse has huge amount of experience in developing multiple startups, and he has proven history of building a small idea from scratch and scaling it iteratively to the huge consumer market.
All right, hey, I'm Lasse. I'm sort of a serial entrepreneur, I guess. I have been founding a couple of companies in the past years, and that is really excited. And I'm guessing that we're gonna go a little bit deeper into that later. I'm actually I have a coding background. I started working as a software engineer and studying computer science and engineering. And eventually I got onto the trip of starting to found companies. And I'm really enjoying that so far, really solving stuff for some people. And
Usually on my channel, I usually discuss on the job, employment, but I guess I never discuss more, or I never give the emphasis on self-employment. So this is one topic that probably we'll discuss today. My question is, like having an idea of being entrepreneur or having an idea of starting something by ourselves versus putting those things into reality. How do you see that? What are your thoughts on that?
So firstly, like when we look at like how we grow up, at least in Germany, it's like you basically get told, you go through school, then you either go through university or you go straight into a company, and eventually you'll end up in a company. You'll work 9 to 5. You'll build a house, build a family, and that's like what society tells you to do. But I think it's really important to first of all notice that there are other ways, which is, for example, founding an own company or being a freelancer, which is very, very similar. And whether or not it makes sense for a person to do that or not, I think it really depends on what a person values and what mindset you follow, right? Mm-hmm. If you like being given a clear goal and then pursuing that goal, that will usually work in an employment kind of state, right? But if you are that kind of let's say self-driven person, where you have something you really want to crush through any walls, and anything that stands in your way, you'll just like find a way around it. If you're that kind of person, then I think you will really enjoy an entrepreneurial spirit and becoming a freelancer or becoming a founder of a company. Most people feel like if I want to become an entrepreneur, I need to quit my job, go all in, take a credit of 200,000 euros, start paying some people for mentoring, product building and stuff, build my huge product. And like I have like this huge risk and liability thing here. And if this thing now fails, like I'm screwed.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is what you don't want. The core and philosophy of how I actually take life as a whole is, if I have any goal, I'll break it down into really, really small steps so that I can try going the first step, so that if that first step fails, I can repeat it over and over again until it succeeds. Mm-hmm. And that is really the core philosophy. And for that reason, I'm very much a fan of part-time entrepreneurship. I actually started as a freelancer while doing a dual study degree. So I had like the full-time studying, then I had the dual part, like working in a company aside. And then in parallel, I even did like an open source project, which attracted lots of people, which eventually turned into the basis of what of the companies that I've built later, right? All of that happened in my free time. And if you're very, very focused, if you have a goal and a vision, and if you then think, okay, what's the smallest step that I can go about, then with very little time, you can actually achieve something and go step by step towards that goal without having to take those huge risks.
So the question is, entrepreneurship is right for everyone, or how one can evaluate that, okay, I can do that? Are there any bare minimums, or are there any eligibility? How one can think of that?
I don't think there's any eligibility thing. I mean, as long as you are willing to pursue that goal, and as long as you are willing to obviously invest some time into it, it doesn't need to be 40 hours or even 20 hours a week, right? It can be a part-time thing. As long as you're willing to drive that forward. And the next thing is mindset-wise, as long as you're willing to listen to people and change your idea to what the market actually needs. As long as that is true, you can actually succeed as an entrepreneur, whether you've studied or not. Whatever your prerequisites are, I believe that any person has the potential to become an entrepreneur by just using their wits, sort of, right? And one key thing that I mentioned there is you have to be able to change your idea to what the market needs, because many people start with an idea, and the number one reason why startups fail is because nobody buys it. So the journey of a startup is always the journey of taking the raw source idea and changing and polishing that into something that the market needs and buys. And that by definition requires a transformation, right? That requires that I have to adapt it. What I have in the end successful on the market is never the same as the initial idea that I just have in my head. That's really, really important to understand, because that implies that if you have this great idea of this great app with all your features in your mind, it means that 80% of what you're planning will not happen like that, because your customer feedback will change it.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you're willing to accept that, and if you're willing, because you are on an open market, right? If you don't fulfill the needs of someone, and if you don't change your idea to do that, then you will fail. But if you're willing to change your idea and to pursue it, then you can. That's the way that you can go.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense also. And as you have quite good amount of experience in developing and co-founding the startups, so it's really good to hear more on these ideas and more on these thoughts. Have you seen, you must be in contact with a lot of entrepreneurs. You yourself has founded a lot of companies. Do you see that a person should possess certain skills or some certain knowledge in order to survive in this journey, or any important knowledge that is like a must-have?
Honestly, I guess reading, writing, and English.
Yeah.
But what's way more important than any skills or not, if I'm looking for a co-founder for a specific thing, I mostly don't care for skills and experience. I'm looking for people with the right mindset. And that's you don't want to be that arrogant person who's my idea is perfect, I'm gonna pursue it just like it is without ever changing it, right? That's the number one reason why people fail. You obviously don't want to be too disorganized so that you can't get anything done. You want to be able to focus very hard. You don't want to be too perfectionistic. I mean, it's mostly really mindset things. If you are willing to work on yourself and on your idea, and if you're looking out for opportunities to learn all along the way, then that's what you'll do. And then no matter what skills you have right now, it will help you build the skills that you need. I don't have any business background, right? I have a software development background, and I've built all this business knowledge by doing that and by experiencing that and by learning from other people. there's other people. Actually, I had a co-founder at my first startup who had a business background, and I educated him on software development. And after, I think he worked for 1.5 years with us on this one startup. After that, he got hired as a senior software developer in another company. So like, again, whatever skills you have, as long as you know your customers and you're willing to change your idea and you're willing to learn what it takes, then I think attitude is almost everything. Yes.
It takes a lot of things uh, when you decide to work on some ideas, because there might be some other factors. For example, you have some dependents behind you, there are some responsibilities on you, so it's kind of a risk for you to leave your stable job and step down into the market where you are not sure if it is going to be successful or not. So in this case, how do you recommend that?
If you need the earnings of the stable employment to survive, then if you ask me, it is very, very clear you should keep that job. You might want to talk with your employer on whether you can maybe scale it down to like 20 or 30 hours a week. Oftentimes that's possible. And then you do your startup on a 10 hours a week basis. That can work, right? That forces you to be very, very focused and specific about what you do, but you can pull up a startup part-time. I've a couple of weeks ago, we had like a brain dump idea on a late evening. And I've built an app out of this idea just by myself. I've also done the research for the business model and everything. Like the app is live now. There's people using it. It's called Same Run. It's for like running remotely with other people. It was live after, I think.
Can you spell it?
Same Run.
Oh, okay.
SAME.RUN is the domain. And the basic app was live after just 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, I worked full-time on something else. So like, by focusing very hard, nailing it down to just what I wanted and what I needed, I was actually able to build this app in like 4 working days maximum. Plus doing business model research, plus actually calling running shoe stores and everything. And obviously, like I have my experiences with startups. So when I have like an idea, I have like a plan. I just go step. That goes very, very quickly and very fast. But even if you're not that clear yet, if you get either some mentoring or get help from someone who has done a couple of startups before, that can help you immensely by shortcutting a lot of things that other people just spend half a year or a year on. And then, you can just shortcut a lot of things.
Okay, from this discussion, there are 2 things that came in my mind. The first thing about job, are there any specific advice by you for the job hunt in Germany?
So what I can give is advice on if you want to work with a startup, right? I have basically no idea about the corporate world. As I mentioned, during my studies, I worked there a bit, but again, I'm not the expert on that. But what I can help you with is how to apply with startups. And generally, startups will value attitude and mindset. And startups will also value it if you have a reason why you specifically want to work there, right? So if for example, I'm actually getting tons of applications all the time, which look very, very default. I think a lot of them are actually generated by either some AI or some template. And they're like, yes, hey, I'm this, I'm that person, and that's what I do, which oftentimes has no relation to what our company is doing. And I found your company very interested. Also, here's my CV, let's have a chat. That's like usually not very interesting. And sometimes there's people who send me an email and like, hey, I've read your post on LinkedIn and I find the way that you run your company very interesting because of X, right? And there's some people who are actually looking into that company and who then identify with the values and who then are able in that email to show that they actually share those values, and that they actually mean it. I mean, that we will check that later, right? So lying there isn't going to help you. But if you go via that route, then like your email, at least for me and for many other founders that I know, that email will most certainly be read in full. Oftentimes you will end up being on a call with them. And then it's more like, if you have the right mindset, it's oftentimes more the question of like, where can we use you in that company so that we can sort of get the return on the investment, so that we can somehow justify to pay you. And it doesn't even really matter what skills you bring. We'll just look for the right place in the company because you have the exact same mindset that we need. So yeah, if you're looking for startups, screw those formalities. The subject line, the email is really important. If you know what company you're applying for, and if you have a really good reason to apply at that specific company, not at like hundreds, then that will really, really help you there.
Yeah, really useful. I also think in the same way. Do you have any opportunities in your organization for the viewers who wish to work in Germany?
Yes. So we have anything from software development over marketing, sales. We're just actually just now building a VIPER.DEV sales as an own company where we help other people building their sales pipelines. To project or key account managing, which is essentially, it sounds more boring than it is. In VIPER.DEV, that actually means that you found companies together with our customers. It means you are their co-founder. It's not we're an agency and we build your product. It means founders are coming to us and you're working with them to make their idea happen and beyond. Okay. And that means so much more than just building the product.
I want to come on that point and I want to discuss more on that topic. There are a lot of people who want to do self-boot projects, like investing by themselves and work on that idea. What are the do's and don'ts in those things?
The big don't is really don't get a huge credit. Don't like spend all your money in one go on one really risky thing and then it's gone or you're completely broke. That's like the really, really big don't. And then the do is make sure that you get some customers, ideally paying customers, as soon as possible. That means that you have to look out for how can you make your business model happen without building this whole app or building the whole website, right? In many, many cases. So let's say you want to build an AI that helps salespeople do a better job. You know, maybe it analyzes some emails that are going back and forth, and then it gives salespeople some tips on whether they are doing good or bad. I'm just making up a random example, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to do that, the traditional way, and that's what most companies and founders are doing, is they built that AI for like 200,000 euros, whatever. Let's just throw down numbers, right? And then they take that and they show it to some people. And then usually what happens is people are like, oh yeah, very, very interesting. See you next time. So they've done the investment. They have like, and that they have this product, but they don't have a business model, right? They only have a product. And that at that point, that doesn't help anyone. So the do in comparison to that would be, if I have that idea, the first thing that I would do is I would contact 10 salespeople. I just, phone them or write them on LinkedIn. And I would ask them, hey, are you interested to pay me personally for me giving you insights on your sales emails? You just put me in BCC. I, as a human, will read them and I will personally give them insights that later my AI will give them. So what I do now is I charge them for the service that I'm going to deliver later via the AI. And instead of using the AI, I'm just doing that manually. And if people start paying me for that, they will usually suggest some changes because, as I said in the beginning, whatever idea you have in your mind, you're going to have to change it for your customers. This idea will not work as it is. So they'll probably give me some feedback on what they actually want. I'll change my approach. Based on that, I will actually do that with them. I'll receive more feedback on whether that actually helps. And if at some point they are actually wiring me money for me doing that, right? I may not be profitable because it costs me so much more time than the $5 that they pay for it, right? That's totally okay. But I can go to an investor and I can be like, look, I talked to 100 people, 20 of those booked it, and they all pay €100 per month for me reading through their emails and giving them suggestions. If you give me €100,000, I can turn that into an AI, and that's essentially, and like I already got the products, I already got the customers, I already got the business model. I just need the engine to make it scalable. Okay. That's so much better as a pitch for an investor than I got an engine, but no wheels, you know?
We discussed about idea and putting it into reality. Then we also discuss about bare minimums, eligibility, and then self-employment versus regular employment, all those things. Now we also discuss about the self-boot projects. Now I want to understand about or take this discussion to the next level about funding, for example. I always hear about a lot of complications or complex terms in the funding, but how does this funding usually works? I mean, it's a funding on idea or it's a funding on the first release or MVP?
Yeah, so the funding discussion, I would like to actually put that into two parts. And I think many people in this channel are also specifically interested in the situation in Germany, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and for Germany specifically, I would like to have, like, firstly, we can talk about investments, traditional investors, which could be anything ranging from an angel investor to an actual investor who does like larger sums. And then we have the government funding area. If you are planning a product that is on a technical level innovative, which means that you literally can't find a company that does this thing on a technical level, then you may be eligible for some government funding. The definition is here that the government cannot support a startup if they are doing the same as other market players, because they would change the market, right? They would do something that the government is not supposed to do. Once that is not true, you can get some government funding. Oftentimes it requires that you work full-time on the idea, also that you have a team. So usually like 2-3 people, but there's especially the Exist fund that gives, I think, €125,000. And there's, depending on the actual country, like whether you're in Hamburg or Berlin or Munich or whatever.
Even city, okay.
Yeah, based on the cities and counties, like how do you call those even in Germany in English? Like Brandenburg and whatever. So yeah, based on the state that you're in, there's also public funding programs, which are usually for innovative projects of that sort. Those programs have usually a very low entry barrier. They usually do not need a working business model, but more like the base idea. And you can get them, I would say, like rather easily. That will, as I said, work if you have a technically innovative thing. The disadvantage there is that getting really into the market with such a thing is a hard thing. And I see many people failing there who are using those funds to actually build their product, because you start being tempted by, yes, this perfectionistic thing, right? You start being tempted to just build your product. Then the funding is over, but you haven't introduced your product into the market yet. And then the startup dies. And that's a story that I see happening all over again. So if you have a public fund, even if you get it, make sure to still think in really small steps and to, obviously you want to build your product, but you really want to get it to your customers as fast as possible. The way of thinking that I like to suggest is, what can I do to launch my product in the next 8 weeks? And if it's like way longer than that, then you probably really shouldn't do that. You probably should reduce it and be more minimalistic about it, even if you have the funds to do it. That's that area. And then there's the area of private investments. And that usually needs, so firstly, good personal relations. And secondly, it's usually, if you have good empirical numbers that show that your business model work, then you'll have a decent chance at getting an investment. And there again, like, I would really focus on getting customers instead of making the perfect product, because investors are not buying the perfect product. They are buying that you can conquer a market, and you can show them that by showing them that you have actually conquered a part of your target group. Even if that's only 20 people, if they pay you for that, that shows that you actually can run a business.
So basically, it's like evaluating your ability of building a client base or targeting the customer. How you do that?
So most investors also, like, when you ask them what's most important on a startup, the number one thing they state is very often the team.
Okay.
Because as I said before, the idea is bad by default. If you have a good team, they can change it into something that actually works. Generally, we help founders at a rather early stage with anything from like, I want to build my first sales pipeline. I want to get my first customers on board, which, as I mentioned before, you should do before building your product, right? Not after, even though it sounds weird. Anything from that to actually building the first product and helping people to make that product better and growing that on the market. We do all that. We actually have multiple companies which we use to help founders in the different areas by now. And I think if you are planning something, and if you are in the early stage, and especially if you haven't founded like 5 or 6 companies yet, then I think you should really have a chat with us. We're going to help you out for free, and we can look at your business model. And yeah, we can help you get to the market. We also can give you some ideas on how you can go about it without hiring us, to get some validation, so that, you know, maybe later you can be in a position that it actually makes sense to build the full product. And we do know that people do come back because we are good and we always deliver what we say that we do. We have the success stories that to back it up, but for now, our policy is really, we help you so good that you will always come back. And that, so far, that works out really well. I think one thing that I really want to, if there's one thing that I want people to take away from this, is that you do not need to be full-time, and you do not need to have 50K of cash in order to start your own business.
Yeah.
You need to look out for some customers, and you need to provide them some value. And if you go via that route, then I think you can try out becoming an entrepreneur. But if you then find out that that is not really fun for you, then that's okay too. Then you tried it and you learned that it's not for you, right? But if you then think it is fun for me, then you can continue that, you can build on that, and then you've done a low risk experiment, you've succeeded, and then you can do the next one. I think that's really the summary of what I would like people to take away.
I guess those are not only the questions, because those are the questions from my mind. Probably there will be a lot of questions in the comments, or maybe from people who are really interested in this topic. I hope I will be back with a set of questions to you. So
No problems.
I really appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on my platform, on my channel, and sharing your experience and views. And I thank you.